Chapter 27. The Last One. Part 3. Madara laughed. He laughed more than he ever had in his life. A woman who thought she could outmaneuver and destroy him only fell to her demise. She was cast away a second time and finally gone from the equation. She was a major thorn in his side and tried to destroy everything that he worked so hard to achieve. His work to create the infinite Tsukuyomi and cast everyone into a dream that would last forever wasn't so far-fetched now that she was gone. He knew that he had Naruto to deal with, but with the added efforts of Sasuke now conforming to his beliefs, he didn't have to worry about Naruto as much as he thought he would. Even if Naruto were to eliminate Sasuke, Naruto would have run out of power by then, and would make it easier for Madara to finish him off. Madara knew that he had this win in the bag. All he had to take care of were the Kage. He had been killing ninja left and right and causing mayhem with each attack. The ninja were always falling hopeless beneath him as he ran through them and ended their lives. He almost felt sorry for them and their weakness. Almost. Tsunade watched as the countless ninja were being taken out. Her teeth grit as she watched Madara savagely destroy waves and waves of shinobi. No one could do anything to stop this massive power and strength that seemed to have come from nowhere. She was reminded heavily of how he stabbed Konan and left her for dead. Her fists clenched tightly in her reminiscing. What could she do? She felt helpless. She wanted to run to Konan's aid and help her, but Madara had already begun to devastate the area and countless people. She felt sorry for Konan but ultimately couldn't do anything at that moment to heal her. She needed to hold on to whatever chakra she had left, which wasn't enough as it was. Where is Naruto? Good question. Tsunade looked up shocked at hearing Madara before her. She saw him off in the distance perched on top of a large rock. His lone eye scanned down below him intimidatingly. Her eyes scrunched in anger as he butted in on her train of thoughts. She knew better though. She had to remain calm. She needed to focus. Naruto is off dealing with another person at the moment, Madara said in disinterest, therefore, you and I will be fighting against each other. Actually, Madara gazed at each Kage lazily, you all will attack me. I'll at least give you a fair shot. Gaara was frightened by the sheer power that Madara seemed to have acquired. He knew something was off about everything that was going on. He could feel it in his bones. Almost like a lost feeling that seemed to be magnetically pulling him subconsciously towards Madara. You absorbed the Biju, haven't you? Yes, I did. I've come ever closer to what you would call a god than before. I'm untouchable now, but I'm going to give you a fighting chance. Madara didn't seem interested in the fight at all. I'm only biding time anyway until the tree that you see off in the distance blooms. Then, none of this will matter. Everyone looked in the direction that Madara motioned towards and saw a giant stalk that grew out of the cocoon that was slowly burning into cinders. Everyone suddenly got an idea in their heads. Before you get any crazy ideas, Madara said boredly, I'm not letting you near that tree. You'll have to get through me first. Tsunade and the others grunted in aggravation. They knew it wasn't going to be easy. He already seemed too fast for anyone to keep up with. Even A, who was known as one of the fastest people in the world, knew that he wouldn't be able to keep up with the speed that Madara now possesses. He could probably distract Madara, but that wouldn't really do much good since Madara seemed to know how A was going to attack. Tsunade looked downwards and thought before she smiled. She sighed a long sigh, so, I guess this is how we go down. Everyone else looked towards her in interest to her words. Madara gazed curiously. I never thought that there would have been a day where I could have fought alongside all of the Kage here and every other shinobi village, side by side. As comrades, she looked towards the other Kage and grinned fully determined, we may not win this, but I'm not going to go out without a fight. She cracked her knuckles as she fell into a stance. Her 100 healing seal burst forth throughout her body. I will make sure that I at least slow you down before Naruto gets here. He will be able to stop you. Madara grinned as he watched the woman prepare to fight him. So you think that boy will save you all? He can't even save his own teammates. He is a failure, and I will see to it that he realizes that. Madara's tone shifted ominously, he will lose. Everyone looked at each other in concern and uncertainty before they gulped and smiled. They knew themselves that this war was about to be over. They could feel it in their bones. Whether they win or lose, it didn't matter. They were going to give it all that they got. The world was depending on them. A loud crash erupted as a new person arrived to the scene. Their golden cloaked forms shined brightly against the darkened night that they were bearing witness to. Clouds of dust kicked up around them as they shielded their eyes. Everyone gasped as they saw the arrival of the Kyuubi container. Naruto. Tsunade shouted, surprised. She didn't think that he would have come by so quickly, but here he stood before her. Suddenly, she felt like things were going to be all right. Hey, Granny, Naruto said straightforward without ever leaving his eyesight from the man in front of him, it looks like I came just in time. Whether you come now or later, doesn't matter, Madara stated matter-of-factly, you will lose this fight. Naruto's face slowly contorted into a rage-filled expression. There were so many things he wanted to say. They all rushed to his head, but he kept his cool, even if his face didn't show it. Madara noticed the look on his face and smiled devilishly. Oh, I see that you've noticed my handiwork. Unfortunately, Konan won't be moving for quite some time. She's finally gone from this world. This is all thanks to you. Naruto looked towards the man, but didn't say anything. The cool that he had was slowly melting away. Konan attempted to change her fate and make a difference in this war. Nothing that she did changed anything. She still died by my hands, and now you're closer to me. Madara shifted his eyes around the enemies around him before he continued. I will capture you and add you to my collection. Now that you're here, you'll have no choice but to submit to me. Either by choice or by force. Don't talk about Konan that way. Madara halted his talk before he smiled, realizing something. I guess you never really understood why I have such a hatred towards the Senju. We Uchiha have always hated the Senju. We attempted to work together to achieve a peace back in the day. But that peace was always fated to be short-lived. Naruto looked onwards in anger as Madara continued his rant. Every word that Madara said trickled more and more anger into Naruto. Once the Senju were wiped out, I had to find the outliers. There were others that left the leaf or left before the leaf was formed. Who knew that one day I would come across another Senju family in Aim of all places? Madara smiled as he kept talking. They had a little girl who didn't understand what it meant to be a Senju and knew nothing about the war between us. That's why I had Zetsu pose as Leaf Ninja and I killed her family. Naruto, shocked at this sudden revelation, looked downwards in horror. Madara killed Konan's family and turned her into an orphan. She had to walk the wet roads alone and try to fend for herself. That thought angered Naruto greatly. You made Konan an orphan just for your sickening plans. Now you're getting it, Madara stated with sarcasm. I used her to make her form the Akatsuki with Nagato and Yuhiko. I knew that with an Uzumaki child and a Senju child who both had hate towards the Leaf Village would be a perfect poetic justice to the Leaf Village that I hated with a passion. Isn't it ironic, having two of the Leaf's most trustworthy and valuable clans going against everything the Leaf stood for? Sanada stood shocked at hearing this new information that sprung up in front of her. Out of everything that she heard, Konan's relation to the Leaf was more substantial. Konan as a Senju? She thought about everything that she heard about Konan and thought back on what just happened to her. Konan was another Senju and worked hard to turn around everything that has happened in this fourth war. She was a family member that she never knew about. Her whole world was flipped upside down at this sudden news. It made her regret that much more about Konan and how she left her there. Her eyes teared up. Naruto, I'd like to go heal Konan. Is she? Konan isn't here anymore, Naruto said to her, slightly choking on his words. It's too late. Sanada frowned deeply in disgrace at herself. What did she do? Another family member that she could have connected with was gone. There was nothing that she could do to forgive herself for leaving her for dead. It's too late to have regrets, Madara said as he prepared himself. Time will cruelly keep moving forward. You can't change what's already been done. Just accept your fate. Naruto, angered by Madara's statements, chimed in. You know, I remember someone who told me about fate. He told me that I couldn't change destiny. That I will always remain that failure or loser that I was. But, Naruto looked towards the enemy ninja. Look at me now. I've never believed in fate, destiny, or whatever else you call it. Naruto chuckled softly while he reminisced. Konan always called me the prophetic one. The one who would change the world and make a difference in everything. Naruto pointed to his chest and looked at Madara with resolve. I don't believe I'm a child of prophecy. I'm just Naruto. But I do believe in my master's will. I come from a will that has been passed down to me from my master, Jiraiya. Naruto pressed his thumb harder against his chest. I'm the last one. The last person to carry on my master's will, and will find that answer to peace that he searched his entire life for. Konan's death will not be in vain. Her desire for peace will live on in me as I finally defeat you. Madara looked onwards with a frown. It looks like he definitely isn't going to quit by choice. I'm going to have to put him in his place. I'm going to beat you, Madara. You've been plotting and scheming for far too long. This is our time. You have already outlived yours. We are the future generation. You shouldn't look down on us. If that's what you think, then come at me, boy. I will show you what true power is. Naruto rushed towards Madara in unparalleled speed. You'll pay for everything that you caused. I'll make sure of it. Konan POV. Konan's eyes opened blearily to a clear blue sky that seemed to stretch for miles. Blades of dark green grass tickled her palms as she breathed in a breath of air that seemed more fresh than the blood-stained atmosphere that she was currently fighting in. She sat up off of the ground, and rubbed her eyes as she tried to gain her bearings. Her thoughts immediately came crashing down upon her as she remembered what she was doing. She was fighting a war. She was fighting for everyone's sakes against the evil Madara. What happened? I died. Her hands shot up to her face in frustration. She had to accept it now. She is dead. She knew she was dead, and her thoughts slammed hard into her chest, knocking the wind from her sails and from her lungs. Her breathing contorted as she gripped the middle of her vest in a fervent attempt to stop the tears that were starting to pour from her eyes, but she couldn't hold it. How could she have been so dumb? She let her guard down against Madara again, and caused another mistake to occur. All of her plans, that she made, went out the window as she realized the problems. Damn that bastard. She leaned over into the ground, banging her fist against the grass. Damn. Damn. Damn you. It's all your fault. Her tears escaped as she finally let go the frustration that her arch-nemesis created. You created this entire mess and caused everyone so much pain. You killed my parents, you fucker. Her teeth grit as she tried to get rid of the torture that she felt, but it was eating her up inside. Her head rested against the ground as her hair splayed across the grass. She heaved into the ground and choked on her breaths. It broke her up inside, being reminded of everything that happened and knowing that the entire thing was caused by one man with a plan to plunge the world into chaos, just so he could envision a world with true peace. Her tears continued to spill forth as she let everything out. Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Naruto. I really hope you can continue on without me. I failed you. Hey, why are you so down? Her eyes widened as she sat up. It was a voice she hadn't heard in a long while. She turned her head and saw a familiar face that seemed to have never aged a day. Jiraiya-sama? Hey there, kiddo, he said while walking towards her. A gentle smile was placed on his face. It's been a while since I last saw you, but you're just as beautiful as you were then. Her hands wiped against her tear-stricken face to try and remove the stains. She was too shocked to speak as tears threatened to burst through. Hey, easy on the waterworks, Jiraiya said while throwing his hands out. You're going to make me look like a bad guy here. She ignored the man's statements and ran to him to give him a bone-crushing hug. So many emotions were spilling forth as she tried to quell her sadness and despair from seeing her dead mentor once again, but it couldn't be stopped. Once the world and all of the conflict that came with it were wiped away as she stood there in purgatory with her old sensei, she couldn't help but feel a need to let go of her past and run to her sensei to find that old feeling of family again. Jiraiya, while surprised, embraced her back fully as she sobbed into his chest. Hey, it's okay. Everything is okay. After another minute or two, Conan broke off of Jiraiya and apologized to him for the affectionate contact. He merely brushed it off. He knew the way Conan felt about him without even having to say anything. I bet you're wondering why I'm here, he said, knowing that she was curious for the sudden contact with him. She merely nodded her head as he continued. Well, there's no easy way to say it, except that you died. You're in the afterlife, or rather, a purgatory of sorts. I don't really get it either, but that's just how it is. She looked down quietly as she evaluated her situation. I'm also here, he started again, after noticing her distress, to guide you properly to make sure you safely make it. Noticing a question starting to form on her tongue, Jiraiya continued, although, you probably expected your parents, he waved his hand, sorry, but I specifically asked them to let me meet you alone. Well, maybe not entirely alone. What? Conan asked, confused. Grass crunched against the ground as another man walked up to the both of them. His hair was a dark shade of red, and Conan had to do a double take to see who was coming up to her. He wore a black cloak that had no more Akatsuki clouds, and he looked younger than he did when he was alive. Nice to see you again, Conan. Nagato, Conan said with shocked sadness. His smile stretched from ear to ear as he walked closer to them. I'm happy to see you again, although, I wish it were under better circumstances. His smile faltered as he continued, how has the war been? Oh, that's right, Jiraiya added as he brought his hand to his chin. Nagato briefed me on this war that you guys are currently fighting. It must be pretty tough. Who would have thought that one man would have this much power? He smiled as he looked back over to Conan. I'm impressed that the Shinobi Alliance was formed. Of course, the world would need a common enemy to put aside their differences. It looks like peace isn't that far away after all. Nagato nodded. Jiraiya-sama is right. The war seems to be the key factor to helping prevent shinobi wars for the foreseeable future, possibly longer. Conan threw her eyesight to the ground as she clenched her fist lightly. I don't know if Naruto-kun can do it on his own. This war, the enemies are very strong. Her hands trembled as she recalled the events from before her death. Since I've died, Naruto-kun has to fight two enemies on his own, and it's all my fault. Nagato and Jiraiya looked at each other before Nagato spoke. You really care for him, don't you? Conan shot her gaze to him immediately after that comment. It's not like that. Nagato sighed as he stared into her eyes. We've been friends for a long time. Did you not think I noticed when you started showing feelings for Yuhiko? He watched as she darted her eyes around, avoiding his own. You helped with that too? Nagato softly laughed. Of course. Why did you think I wasn't around often, when you guys were together? I even gave you both reasons to do things together at times. Conan lightly blushed as she recalled the events she had with Yuhiko. Now knowing that Nagato had something to do with all of that time they conveniently spent together, she felt embarrassed over this new information. Is that right? Jiraiya guffawed loudly as he slapped Nagato's back. Even though you were so quiet back then, look at you. Good job. Nagato winced at the sudden slap. Thanks, Jiraiya-sama. But, I don't have feelings for Naruto-kun like you hope them to be. It's just a friendship. Nothing more, Conan stuttered. A friendship that you so purposefully forced to keep the status quo. Nagato sighed again. I know that you like him. You may even love him. I've seen it just from the interactions alone. You may be in denial, but I can see the way you look at him. Surprisingly, you wear your emotions on your sleeve a lot more these days than before. You don't understand. Conan shouted as she turned to them with clenched fists. Can you honestly say that you would be okay with crossing the line? Do you even know what kind of torture that is? Conan turned her side to the right. You have no clue what type of thoughts and ideas cloud my head. I've been thinking about this for so long, but I can't commit to something like that. It just isn't right. Look, Jiraiya mentioned, trying to butt in on the conversation. I can honestly vouch for the brat. He may be loud and annoying sometimes, but that kid is a good kid with a good head on his shoulders. But that's the problem. Conan shouted to the both of them, making them flinch slightly. He is a kid. I'm many years older than him. Maybe if he was in his 20s or something, then I wouldn't mind as much, but he just turned 17. He's already 17? Jiraiya asked, surprised at this sudden news. Wow, time really flies in the afterlife. But anyway, Jiraiya shrugged. I say, so what? The kid is obviously 1 year away from being 18. Not really that far from an adult, to be honest. Plus, when he signed his life away at the Ninja Academy and became a ninja, he already became an adult to the eyes of the public. Even if you were to consider it wrong, it wouldn't really be wrong. Now you're just using technicalities, Conan brought up with aggravation. He could have a much more meaningful and fulfilling life with someone else besides me. Why bother with someone like me anyway? I wouldn't deserve him. So you admit that you like him then? Jiraiya asked, smirking. Conan looked over to Nagato and saw that he was smirking as well. Then, anger began to boil in the pit of her stomach. For some reason, something broke inside her. Maybe it was the smiles that they geared towards her. Maybe it was them playing her like a fool. Maybe it was the constant battle between them about her affection for a certain Uzumaki. Maybe it was the fact that she was in the afterlife and nothing really mattered anymore, since she couldn't do anything about any of it. But she clenched her teeth. She's had enough. All right. Yes, okay. Her hand flew up to her forehead before she yelled again. These were things she needed to get off of her chest. You want to hear it, then you'll hear it. I like him. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I like him. I actually have fallen for him. As a matter of fact, I am in love with a 17-year-old boy. Her hands covered both of her eyes. I've thought about things that I wouldn't normally think about with him. I've had so many close, intimate moments with him that I'm actually afraid that I will move forward with my feelings and do something I might regret. Her hands rubbed against her arms as she continued. The times we've shared together have shown me something that I haven't had in a long time. There's a certain warmth that envelopes me whenever he's around me. I can't describe it. Nagato and Jiraiya looked to each other before she continued her rant. I've tried to play it off so often because I knew in my heart that no matter what I did, that I would never have that relationship with him. Even if I did, I felt in my heart that it wouldn't last long because he would always rather find someone younger than I. Just what is wrong with me? I can't believe I'm saying all of this. Conan, no, she shook her head and squeezed her eyes shut. I've given up on love a long time ago. Ever since Yuhiko passed, I never wanted to fall in love again. The pain was unbearable the first time. Why should I put myself through that again? Conan. Look, she started again with her hands slowly loosening against her forehead. The exasperation was evident on her face. Naruto-kun has done so much for me. I'll give him that. While I admit that I love him, I just can't do it. It goes against everything I've learned. Why try something that I know will fail? She chuckled softly in defeat. Would you openly admit your love to someone half your age? How would that make you feel? It wouldn't matter, because love is love. Conan's eyes widened as she turned around and noticed a new figure presenting himself to the group. A man stepped up with carrot-colored hair. His attire consisted of similar clothing to Nagato, reminiscent to the old days of Akatsuki. When I fell in love with you, I never cared about your age. All I ever cared about was you. Yahiko, Conan whispered as she walked over to her ex-lover. His face showed a warmth and determination that she used to see on his face all of the time. That same face of someone who showed concern for her. Conan, I know it's been a long time since I passed away in the ninja world, and I'm still sorry. I also know because of that, you blocked your heart to keep yourself from feeling the pain after my death. Yahiko smiled as he kept talking. You have another man who's willing to love you for who you are. Why wouldn't you reciprocate his feelings? You too? Conan, feeling shocked at Yahiko's sudden questioning, responded quickly, I'm just too old for him, Yahiko. Even you should understand that. If he's of age, then why does it matter? Ah. Conan threw her hands into the air. Why is everyone against my reasoning? Am I the only sane person here? We just want you to be happy, Nagato finally spoke up. When their eyes connected, she could see just how serious that response was. His face was stern. You're very special to us, and we only want you to have a happy life. I'm sure Naruto wants the same for you as well. Conan threw her side to the side with contempt. I don't want his pity. If Naruto is as Nagato has told me, then I honestly don't see anything wrong with this relationship, Yahiko said with a thoughtful expression. Conan, Nagato replied, are you really going to isolate yourself from him? Would you be happy by yourself? Conan fell into her thoughts. They spiraled as she tried to make sense of everything that was being said. She can't deny that she loves Naruto any longer. She knew that she fell in love with him. She always knew. But she was scared. She didn't want to hurt again. Her mind ran idly as she thought of scenarios in her head that showed her a different time and place, where Naruto was an adult and had kids, but not with her. With another woman that was younger than her, and Conan would come to visit every once in a while to see how things were. Even though she could see that happening, her heart ached at the thought alone of Naruto ending up with someone else. It was an ache that penetrated her soul. Just because it goes against the grain, why try to prevent something that you know in your heart to be right? Nagato asked the silent woman, the only thing that is stopping you is your fear. The fear of eventually losing him to someone else once he gets bored of you. You're afraid of losing the last one that you ever gave a chance to hold dear. You're afraid of your plan failing once again. Conan's demeanor changed as the thought struck a nerve. She looked down to the grass deep in thought and finally realized that Nagato was indeed right. After all of this time, the pieces finally fell into place, and it all started to make sense. Conan's sense of order and planning that she was so proud of had failed several times. Each time was with a loved one that she held dear. Maybe if he wouldn't have ran away and wasted time and just did what her parents told her, then they would still be alive to this day. Maybe if he didn't get caught by Hanzo and his men, then maybe Yahiko would still be alive to this day. Maybe if he tried to help Nagato instead of allowing him to go down the wrong path to change, then maybe he would also be alive to this day. Maybe if he didn't follow Nagato's plan so precisely and not let her sadness get to her head, then maybe Jiraiya would have also been alive. You're right, Conan said while her eyes started to tear up. Her expression was still intense as all things came to a head. I've been so afraid to try something new because I knew that it wouldn't work out. I was so confident that it wouldn't work. I was afraid of taking that chance and wanted to maintain what little order I had left with myself and my life. Even if it wasn't the right choice. But I couldn't change it because I knew that deep down that things need order. Otherwise, if I stepped out of line and did something different, I wouldn't know what lies beyond, and that scares me. Conan smiled as she teared up to her own realization. She rubbed her eyes to staunch the tears. I can't stop them. The group came to her and enveloped her into a hug. Smiles were plastered on everyone's faces. Looks like you finally figured it out, Jiraiya said while softly chuckling. This would be a great story to write for another one of my books. Too bad pen and paper inconveniently don't exist in the afterlife. Conan grinned genuinely as she looked up to him with her tear-covered eyes. You're still writing those books, huh? Some things never change. Not anymore, Jiraiya said while sighing, although real life seems to be writing a better ending than I could have thought of. I mean, hey, Naruto and an ex-Akatsuki member forming a relationship? A love with an enemy? That would be a big seller. Oh, stop it, Conan giggled while gently bopping his chest with her fist. While the four were caught up in the moment with laughter and happiness, a thought dawned on Conan and sucked away whatever happiness she had before. Wait a minute. If I'm dead, none of this matters anyway. Why did we even talk about this? The group looked at each other before the three men nodded to one another. Right, Nagato said, we forgot to mention that you have one more visitor. That young child is correct. Conan turned around suddenly to the voice and noticed an older-looking man with a goatee floating behind her. He looked to be in his 70s, but had a presence that screamed godlike. "Who are you?" Conan asked, bewildered. His aura was calm for an older man, and he seemed to be very wise, but his aura also seemed large and threatening. Almost like someone who could permanently delete you from the universe. It was a strange feeling. "My name is Hagoromo Otsutsuki. People from your time tend to refer to me as the Sage of Six Paths." Sage of Six Paths? Conan yelled. Conan knew exactly who the Sage of Six Paths was. He was a historical figure who was someone that was revered to be a god that helped form everything that exists today. Conan didn't know what to do in this instance, so the only response was to leave her mouth slightly agape. "That is correct. Do not be frightened." "That's right, Conan," Jiraiya started back up. "He has come to help you." Conan gazed upon the floating man as he watched her with peculiar eyes. Her curiosity got the better of her as she pondered, "Why do you need my help?" "Do you have a quick wit?" Hagoromo mentioned. "I've come to help you, but not without help of my own. That requires your assistance." Quid pro quo. He stared intensely at Conan. "I'm afraid Naruto doesn't have much time to live." "What?" A collective shout was heard, but Hagoromo continued, "While Naruto Uzumaki is indeed strong, he doesn't have the power to fight these enemies alone. The rest of the shinobi world has fallen into chaos from a large army of white Zetsu and controlled forms of all of the Biju. The only ones still fighting currently are a handful of shinobi, your village's leaders, and Naruto Uzumaki." Conan looked conflicted as she tried to process this new information that the sage was telling her. "But what can I do? I'm currently dead with no way to go back onto the battlefield, unless you have a way to bring me back there." "Naruto Uzumaki is unknowingly reviving you as we speak," Hagoromo told them all. Conan seemed to be startled by this. "He is?" "Yes, it seems something that he's wearing is delivering pure chakra from Kurama into your system. We only have a few minutes before you are fully resuscitated." "Something he is wearing," Conan murmured before she gasped. "That chakra rod piercing. This is so we always know where the other is. I'll always be able to find you, no matter what danger you're in. Don't worry. I'll protect you. I promise." "It's a piercing that he put on during the war. He gave me one as well, to replace my older lip piercing. Apparently, it has more use than we thought before." "Indeed," Hagoromo said as he continued on, "I've come to realize something while watching Naruto and other descendants of mine fight. That is why I'm going to grant you something that you can use to help Naruto turn the tides of war in his favor." Conan looked confused as the sage extended his hand. "Come now, child. I must apply this power quickly for we do not have much time." Conan, with reluctance, walked over to the man knowing that time is of the essence. She couldn't afford to make another mistake, especially after everything that has been done so far. She wanted to help Naruto again, and she knew that this time, she wasn't going to fail. This needed to be done. Hagoromo reached out with 2 fingers and gently pressed them against her forehead. After a moment, a surge of power seemed to spring forth, entering her soul and coursing throughout her body. A godly euphoria swept through her senses as Hagoromo continued to apply this power to Conan. She didn't know what it was, but she hoped that, whatever the sage was giving to her, would be beneficial to the fight that was about to take place when she comes back to life. After the transaction between her and Hagoromo, what was left was a faint red circle that seemed stamped directly in the middle of her forehead. She could feel a faint burning itch where the circle lay that seemed to not go away. "What is this?" "When you awaken in the living plane," Hagoromo began, "your powers will immediately take hold. Lest you be consumed by the power from the sudden change, I strongly advise to withstand the temptation of your newfound power to control your actions. The power is something similar to that of what my mother Kaguya herself had to endure. Although, her power was 1,000-fold of what you will experience when you awaken. Do not take it lightly." Conan nodded her head as she took in this new information. She was given a power that would want to control her, but she knew better than to let that happen. There were many things that she must do, and she couldn't let something like this stop her now. "I understand what I must do." Conan looked over to her group and saw them all smiling with newfound confidence. They could see the reaction on her face and knew that she knew what she was doing. "Hey, Conan," Jiraiya said softly, while smiling to her, "you have a bright future ahead of you. I know that you'll do the right thing. You were always the smartest one of the group." "Hey, I take offense to that." Yahiko yelled at his sensei as the older man laughed. Nagato started talking as the 2 others bickered. "Hey, I know that we are all in the afterlife, but you do have one more person that we all support. Naruto-sen will take care of you. It's what I always wanted anyway." "But," Nagato looked down shortly, before he looked up again with a smile, "we all want you to be happy. Whatever you might decide. We will support your decision." "Nagato is right," Yahiko said as he stood in front of Conan. "We all just want you to be happy. You deserve it." Just don't show up here again until you're old. I don't want to see you here too early. Live a long and healthy life. Yuhiko, Conan whispered with a smile. Her eyes started tearing up again. Thank you all. I won't hold back. I know what I must do. The resolution was clear on her face. It was almost as if she had found peace that she had been searching for all of this time. Nothing more was said as Conan slowly faded away from spiritual existence. Naruto POV. Naruto was trying his hardest against Madara, but it seemed with every punch, kick or swipe, he just easily evaded everything that he threw at him. Even his jutsu, that he was well known for, like the Rasengan, or even his new techniques with Bijuu bombs, wasn't giving him enough leeway to keep the odds in his favor. He didn't realize just how strong Madara actually was. It was almost like he underestimated him, but he didn't want to let that get to him though. There were things that he needed to accomplish, and that involved saving the world first from this crazy guy who decided to destroy the world with him. Naruto, I've already told you. You can't do anything to me, Madara said as he chuckled darkly. Why try to fight inevitability? Just give up. I will see to it that this world ends. And I've told you that I won't give up. How hard is that to understand? Naruto said with arched eyebrows and temporarily out of breath. I'm sick of your attempts to change me. I know I can make this world a better place without lying to myself with dreams. Ironically, you will also be the cause of the world being better in the process. Be proud. Naruto started gathering a black mass within his palm. A sphere that looked eerily similar to the Rasengan. He launched toward Madara with great speed. Madara, on the other hand, generated a sphere of his own. You're not very bright. I'll just cancel it out with my own like before. Madara darted towards Naruto with the Bijuu bomb sphere in his hand. His eyes were darkened as he leered at the boy that was homing in on him. Naruto smirked as he collided his Bijuu bomb with the opposite bomb. Madara didn't know, but Naruto changed his Bijuu bomb this time. Who knew that doing something simple like adding Senjutsu to it would make so much of a difference? A different reaction than his previous attempts happened as suddenly, a bright light erupted from the collision. A screeching emanated from the two balls hitting each other until a loud blast thundered through the area with a deafening roar. Madara's screams were overshadowed by the explosion, and the light that once blinded suddenly went dark and silent. After a few moments, Naruto looked around and took notice of his environment. He was standing somewhere in an empty void. He didn't know where he was, and he couldn't hear or see anything. Hello? He shouted to no avail. His calls were falling on deaf ears as he made attempts to reach anyone. Is there anyone here? After hearing silence, he kept walking. He flared his golden chakra cloak hoping to see if anything was around, but he couldn't see much better than he could without the cloak. But, with his slight fear of being completely in the darkness, he left his cloak on, so he could at least see his own body. After walking for what felt like 10 minutes, he suddenly started hearing something. It sounded like a woman. Or it could have been a little girl. He didn't know, but he could hear it coming from what sounded like a direction to his left. He turned that way, hoping to find something that could help him get out of this black hell that he seemed to be in. I can't protect him. Why am I so weak? Naruto began to notice that he could finally hear what she was saying. He heard her crying, and suddenly felt melancholic towards her. My only hope lies in Naruto now. He will bring that man to his end. I just know it. He is the true embodiment of light itself. She said my name, Naruto said, surprised. Looking closer, he gasped at what looked to be like Conan sitting up ahead. She was wearing her old Akatsuki robe and looked to be in great distress. He was a little suspicious, but he couldn't stop himself in wanting to reach out to her. How could he not? He got closer, and his mouth moved, as if he wanted to say something, but stopped as she got up. He noticed that she started to walk towards something. She looked as if she were searching for something up ahead of her. He followed behind to study the situation more. After all, this could all just be a trap set up by Madara. After following behind her for a few minutes, she started to run. He chased behind her in the attempt to keep up. She looked desperate and seemed to be pushing herself to reach whatever it was that she was trying to get to. Then, just as quickly as she started to run, her legs went weak and she collapsed on her knees. I knew it. I'm pathetic. I can't do anything right. Why is everything so difficult? Conan pounded her fist on the black surface she was sitting on and brought her knees to her shoulders and wrapped her arms around them, resting her head on her knees. I should just die alone. Hearing that, Naruto's heart broke for the woman. After hearing her spilling her emotions forth, his eyes started to moisten as well. He knew deep down that Conan was having trouble with herself. He always knew that there were some things that she never wanted to talk about with him. He saw her crying many times. Some of these times were when she would do it in front of him, others were times where she thought she was alone. He knew just how much of a difference that he had on her life. Life never seemed to be easy to her, and he couldn't help but feel sympathy towards her and her reactions. I should help her. Even if this is a dream, or if this is a trap, I should do something about this. It wouldn't be right to leave it alone. A couple of moments later, a figure placed his hand on her shoulder. Hey Conan, you shouldn't give up. Conan slowly raised her head up and revealed puffy eyes and cheeks. But it wasn't the Conan everyone now knew. This Conan took the form of her 12-year-old self in an oversized Akatsuki outfit. She looked up and widened her eyes at who she saw. Naruto? The figure looked down at her with a wide but warm grin. He was a golden color with a golden cloak with bright golden flames that danced around his form. He also bore black tattoo-like designs on his torso that was unknown to Conan. Of course, she recognized him entirely once she saw the whisker marks etched on his face. I know you want to just forget everything, and I understand that, but if you do that, then you will never know what will be in store for you, he replied warmly. Conan looked at him for a moment before responding. His presence was astounding. She had never seen him like that before. His appearance was calming in a way as well, because only a few moments ago she was so tired of it all, but now it was as if something was different. But Naruto-san, how am I supposed to have anything in store for me? I died, the blue-haired girl replied in question, and looked like she was going to choke on tears again. Naruto placed his hand to his chin, as if in thought, yeah, I suppose you're right. You seem to be in a pretty bad situation. That's what I thought. Conan replied in anger, even you don't even know how I will ever live again. I knew I should have never believed in you. You're just a big fake who never knew the realities of life. Naruto stood there silently as he took in all of her insults. He looked at her with an impassive face. I never knew you thought that about me. Conan cried to herself as she sat there. If you truly feel that way about me, then I guess I will just know. Please stay here. I'm sorry, Naruto. I don't know what to do, she replied, making Naruto stop midway in his turn around. Naruto walked over to her with his brightened aura following him. Conan-san, you are a strong woman. You already know what you must do. You knew the entire time. Conan looked back up at the now grinning Naruto and pondered momentarily. What did he mean she already knew? Unless, I should help to defeat Madara. Naruto gave her a wider grin that turned into a foxy smile. Exactly, did you think I could kick his butt without you? Do you know everything about him? Do you know his moves, his weaknesses, and what he is planning? If you weren't around, I don't think I could do it on my own. Besides, we're best friends now, aren't we? Conan thought about his statements. Friends? She thought of the alliance as nothing more than a bond of countries, not a friendship with Naruto. Could they really be friends? She smiled at the thought. Another friend, now, Naruto started as he held out his hand. Are you going to mope around, or are you going to help me give this guy the ass kicking that he deserved a long time ago? That statement took Conan aback for a moment, before she broke out into the warmest smile she ever had in a while. Sure, Naruto-kun, let's do it. She grabbed his hand as he lifted her up to her feet. Naruto made a mad dash towards the light, while Conan ran side by side with him. The further they ran, the closer the light was coming. Conan slowly changed to her adult self with each step she took as they slowly picked up their pace, by moving faster and faster. The light was looming ever closer as Naruto looked over to her, and responded with a determined smile. Don't worry, Conan-chan. I will help you every step of the way. We will do this together. I promise. Conan returned the smile and a light nod at her friend as they gained even more speed, that was fast enough to break the sound barrier. Suddenly they came to the giant light as it encased both of them, and consumed their masses.
End of chapter 27.